Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and we're talking about the Aurora complexes again. So last year, an apartment complex was shut down with 6 days notice by the city. Everybody was evicted. It was a huge mess. Well, they just announced they're shutting down another complex and talked about why they're shutting it down, which is a completely different reason than why they shut down the last building, which was owned by the same people. And that's really interesting. We'll talk about how long they're giving residents this time, how that process is working. And we'll also talk about some really disturbing other information and videos we've seen come out of these apartments with the crime, with the gangs involved, the police and everything, that was basically brushed under the rug by a lot of people. So I saw this article pop up a day or two ago, and it surprised me. Court grants emergency order to shut down Aurora apartment complex immediately. The city and property owner CBZ Management were in court Monday over the complex where Aurora police say crime has continued. Now, in August, Aurora apartment owner says cops let immigrant gang overrun complex, but officials say neglect turned it into a slum. This is the article about another complex being shut down by Aurora. And in this one, the city police said it was all code violations and property issues, and there was no gangs taking over, no problems. Now, the same owner of these properties, the same situation, they're saying it was a crime out of control that caused them to shut this down. And what's interesting is they use the exact same documents and reasons to shut down both properties. A judge has granted the city of Aurora request to fast-track the closure of CBZ Management's property, The Edge at Lowry Apartments, where 2 people were kidnapped in December. I did a video on that too. Crazy situation. On Thursday, the city filed a petition for injunctive relief and emergency closure of the Aurora apartment complex due to ongoing crime and safety concerns. A judge on Friday granted that emergency order, saying that the properties present an imminent threat to public safety and welfare if allowed to remain open, which is really interesting because they used the same nuisance order to shut this apartment down as they did the last one. In the last one, they claimed it was all code violations and the landlord's fault for why it was shut down. The city of Aurora said there are 60 apartments that will be affected by the closure. They are working with Arapahoe County and other community partners to provide relocation assistance to the tenants living in those apartments, according to a spokesperson for the city. CBZ Management in the city met in court Monday afternoon to discuss the next steps. Much of the court proceedings, including trying to identify who is the attorney of record for 5 Dallas partners, which is named in the lawsuit. Now, this gets confusing because the landlords have defaulted on some of their loans, and then another party was kind of taking over these apartments. For the apartments that were shut down and completely vacant, they listed those properties for sale. So there's all these different parties involved now, and it's just a gigantic mess. And then part of this, the city may also be trying to take over these properties as well, which a lot of people told me in the beginning of this, that was their entire goal the whole time, and who knows. City Attorney Pete Schulte said the defense attorneys are unnecessarily prolonging court proceedings. Stall, Schulte said in court Monday, we see this a lot with this group. Attorney Bud Slatkin replied to the court, we are not in the process of stalling. We are in the business of protecting the residents, protecting the properties, and being good citizens of Aurora. Sounds like Aurora really wants to shut this down as fast as possible. And the property managers are saying, hey, hold on, let's figure this out. The court hearing ended with another hearing scheduled for March 3rd. Despite proceedings going to March, the city anticipates the building will be entirely shut down by mid-February. So that gives us a month, not 6 days like they did before. It was absolutely crazy what they did before. They gave tenants 6 days notice, showed up with the police, everybody was kicked out onto the street. The city had done some work to help tenants, but mostly they said it's up to nonprofit groups to figure out what to do with them, where they should go. It was awful, to say the least. In December, the city and CBZ Management reached an agreement to shut the complex down. At that time, the apartments were given until February to close. In the petition filed Thursday, Aurora Police Chief Todd Chamberlain wrote the complex has become an epicenter for unmitigated violent crimes and property crimes perpetuated by a criminal element that has exerted control and fear over others residing at this apartment complex. That's the chief of police saying that. Chamberlain, who advocated for an emergency closure, also wrote, "The apartment complex has reached a breaking point." He said, "Without intervention, he believes criminal behavior will continue to flourish and make living conditions untenable for law-abiding residents in the neighborhood." Slight editorial by me here, but my understanding has always been it's the police's jobs or position to stop criminal elements like this and not rely on the property owners, which is what these nuisance orders have said, is that it's the property owner's fault for allowing all this crime to happen. And we're going to show you a rather disturbing video that kind of counteracts that a little bit, and some disturbing pictures as well from stuff that previously happened at these apartments. I'm not going to go through all this. Aurora Housing and Community Services Director Jessica Prosser said the city is in the process of selecting an entity that will act as a receiver and help connect tenants with other housing and identify who is legally living on site versus those who are not legally living in the building. So it's important that the company that's acting as a receiver, again, creates that inventory of who's residing there. And one of the first steps, Prosser said, when it comes to the county helping people, maybe with financial assistance. And basically, a receiver is someone who takes over the building, could take control of it, possibly sell it, possibly liquidate it to pay bills, etc., from everything I've learned. But there's not much information on that in these articles. Okay, now back to this other article. I'm glad I found this one because I'd been looking for this article for a while, even though I did a video on it before. And so many people commented on my video saying it was fake, it was disproven, there were no gangs, it was just property management's fault. Well, in this article, the news, the governor, a lot of government officials said, yeah, it was the property manager's fault. Gangs were imaginary, they weren't there. Of course, then we saw videos of gangs breaking into apartments. We saw gang members arrested for murder and assault and bribery and kidnapping. We saw 14 to 19 possible gang members arrested for kidnapping people and torturing them in the buildings. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe there's a gang problem here. Once that news came out that you can't discredit, then they started to admit that, yes, there's probably a gang problem here. And what's sad is there were police reports, there were assault reports dating back to 2023, way before any of this happened, of people being assaulted, murdered, extorted, including the property management of this building, and police reports that show it, and they pretended they didn't exist. So this was the property before that people said wasn't about gangs, it was for code violations. And here's the nuisance letter that discussed why they were shutting down the property, which a lot of the news never showed this, right? They never said, well, specified crime property determination notice. They never said it wasn't actually property condition or code violations. It was for crime. This notice is being sent to you, yada, yada, yada. Criminal activity on the property is a public nuisance under the Aurora Municipal Code. Property owners are expected to be vigilant in preventing or deterring crime on or in their property and will be held responsible for the use of the property by tenants, guests, and occupants. There's an extensive criminal call history for this property to include motor vehicle theft, aggravated assault, arson, disturbing the peace. Notably, crime data indicates crime rates at the property have risen almost 30% since you purchased the property in 2019. It is my determination the property is a criminal nuisance property in violation of Section 6262 of the Aurora City Code. And here they list the calls for the last 12 months there. It's insane. If your property continues as a specified crime property despite this notice, I will authorize a civil proceeding seeking closure of the structure as well as the imposition of civil penalties against you as the owner of the property. The proceedings will commence in Aurora Municipal Court no sooner than 10 days. And they did. They shut it down. And then in the news, in the media, they said it was for code violations and property management issues. However, in their letters, everything filed in court, everything official, said it was for crime. And they said it was the owner's responsibility to stop crime. The owners themselves have posted things on Twitter. So this is the CBZ Management's Twitter, which has amazing information on it if you ever want to peruse it. This is one of their property managers who was beaten in 2023 at one of the complexes for not letting the gangs take over, or he tried to pay rent. Filed a police report. It was not officially, they reported to the police, called the police. Took him like 7 months to file the police report and then issue an arrest warrant for the person who did it. Later on, that person was also arrested for attempted murder or murder. I forget which one, the same person. And they were TDA, illegal immigrant from the gangs who were here. And the whole year after that, Aurora and the police said there's no gang problem, there's no issue. It's just this guy, the property manager's issue for not taking care of the property. And when they went there, this is what happened to them. And this was them asking the Attorney General for help, more police, security, etc. at the apartments. Wow, here's an email from Sergeant Anna Bungards. I don't know if you can read this, I'll read it. Happy Friday, I hope I am not out of line by sending you this article. This is a group we spoke about yesterday in Shoot Review, as well as when Agent Gallegos and I spoke afterwards to you about the shooting at 1568 Nome. That's the apartment that was shut down. We are working intelligence reference this shooting with Homeland Security. According to interviews from residents, Tren de Aragua is working out of Aurora and residing in our city. They are seeking asylum and requesting Foundation de Paparagua provide housing for them. Okay, this is the most disturbing part of it. This is from Danielle Jurinsky, who is a city council member who is a huge proponent of trying to get this out in the news. And people called her all kinds of names and said she was making stuff up. Turns out pretty much everything she said was true. The women screamed too much all night long. This is a video of them interviewing residents at the apartment about women being forced into the apartments and who knows what happening. There was the loan company who had the loan for the owners did their own review with lawyers. They said there was evidence of minor sex trafficking, all kinds of awfulness happening at these apartments.
Hasta no they know about any sex trafficking. Bueno, la señora, eso pasa en ese edificio. Por eso yo lo podía grabar de ahí de la esquina, por eso pusimos las donas para que ellos nos puedan ver para acá adentro. Cuando nosotros estamos ahí mirando que ahí metían a muchachos, pero como ya llegó la luz, ya llegaron esta nueva compañía, ya hay seguridad, ya no lo están haciendo. Pero la señora que vive ahí en el 105 se fue también por las amenazas, porque ella también hablaba mucho de la policía, porque la mujeres gritaban demasiado toda la noche.
¿Sobre qué apartamento no se metían a los niños?
En el 103, en el 304 que está aquí en la esquina, y en el 202. Ya, bueno,
¿cuándo fue la última vez que sucedió?
Eso la última vez creo que fue unos días antes de que ellos llegaran. Creo que ellos llegaron hace como 3 semanas. No sé cómo 3 semanas.
About 3 weeks ago.
Was the last time?
Yeah.
Are any of those girls here? Do they see those girls? No. They bring them from somewhere else? Llevan el carro allí enfrente y las metían hasta arrastrándolas. Entonces la señora dijo, es que hablaba la policía y dicen que no tienen oficiales. Y yo también hablaba, las dos hablábamos, pero la policía no aparecía. Porque a veces la policía dice que a lo mejor es un pleito doméstico, pero yo le decía, no, es que los metieron a las puertas. No. Did they think that these were other migrant women, or were these American women? Pues pedían ayuda en español.
¿De qué nacionalidad serían?
No, porque las traían como muy tapadas y no se les podía ver bien, nada más les oíamos gritar y que las soltaran, pero no se las soltaran.
So kind of bring them in, kind of covered up, that they don't know what nationality they might be, but they heard them screaming in Spanish.
So we had the police saying there's too much crime, the government saying there's too much crime with these apartments, but then when the residents and tenants themselves report crimes and people being dragged into the building and screaming and asking for help, they wouldn't show up, they wouldn't come there. It sounds like they basically left the residents and the property managers to their own devices to solve an international gang problem. Some more interesting news. New landlord will pay tenants high-profile Aurora apartments to move out. Advocates call it hush money. So this is another apartment complex. And basically what happened here, if you want to read this article, you can. The nonprofit housing groups in Denver told the tenants to stop paying rent here until repairs were made. Well, the landlord, this is a new landlord, came in and said, the building's actually in much better shape than I thought. We did a little bit of work to it, did some pest control, boarded up some broken windows, but everybody stopped paying rent. So they started offering them cash for keys to move out, which means they pay them to move out so they can, if they need to fix it up more, rent it to other people, etc., that's what they do. Well, then the housing advocate said, well, it's hush money, they're trying to pay us off, and this landlord is evil. So basically they told them to stop paying rent, and when they don't pay rent and the landlord wants to pay them to move out, they said the landlord is bad and trying to pay off the tenants. So I'm not sure if they think the tenants just get to live here for free or what's going on at this one, but this is a different landlord who took over that one, who's obviously having similar and same issues. And it's like, how many people are we going to blame and point fingers at with these same issues? Now, going back to this letter last year that accused of being bad landlords, what's really interesting. Okay, going back to this original article about is all the property manager's fault, bad code violations, etc., even though the nuisance letter said otherwise, they had all the photos, reports, and records provided by the city of Aurora. And CBZ said this in their... So this is not opening for me. It's being really weird right now. But this is the code violation reports that shows that the city listed some code violations, and the management companies came back in and fixed it. And they claimed on Twitter they spent over $1 million doing it. I don't know if that's true or not. But these court records and code violations showed code violation. A month later, they came back, passed, it was taken care of. And I showed that one in my first videos. Again, and they just said over and over, the property manager did nothing, they're awful. Well, they came in and fixed the code violations. And a lot of those code violations were like a pothole that was 2 inches thick, cars without registration or license plates, even though Denver made it illegal to tow cars for non-registration. Insane, totally minor stuff. And it was just, this whole situation's been crazy. So here we are, another shutdown. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this property, if the city does take it into receivership or how that all works. It'll be interesting to see what happens with these properties in the long run. I think there were 3 apartment complexes to clear this up. I know this is confusing. Nome, Whispering Pines, and Lowry, if I get this straight. Nome is the first one that was shut down and vacated. I think the original owners still own that, have it for sale, as far as I know. Whispering Pines, I think, was either sold or put into receivership for this other landlord, and that's the one who said it wasn't as bad as he thought and tried to do cash for keys, and it doesn't work. Lowry is one still owned mostly by the old landlord, but maybe one building is in receivership, and the city's trying to take over the rest by receivership, and that's the one they're emptying out now. So what's really frustrating for me is just the crime that was being done there. Possibly minors involved. The state paid grants out for people to house illegal immigrants, and then the government turned their back on those landlords who did what they wanted and house those illegal immigrants, and then is actually going after them now. I mean, talk about that. The district attorney is investigating these landlords for bad property management. It's just crazy. And then the police saying, and the judge and the government saying we have to shut these down for crime because the landlords did not police crime themselves. And I'm a landlord. I don't know how to police crime myself. If there's an issue, if there's a problem, we always tell the tenants to call the police, or we would call the police and meet the police there and take care of it. And if they aren't going, if they aren't helping, I don't know what a landlord is supposed to do. I don't think that's their responsibility. So we'll see how this goes. Of course, we'll have more videos of my properties, my businesses. Luckily, Aurora is about an hour away from me, so maybe not far enough away from me, but this isn't really happening in my neck of the woods that I've seen, or isn't happening yet, but Colorado's an interesting place right now. So let me know what you think, and we'll have more updates on this. I'd love to have more information if anyone out there has more information that I shared or missed.